walking right out of Deadpool 2, out of the theater, right? Just walked out the door. And, I mean, holy shit, we were pretty much all blown away by that. I thought still kind of working it over. So much to think about with this movie, and that's actually one of the cool things about it is there is so much more to chew on in this movie than anyone would think so, or at least mainstream people would claim there is. It's this because we all know that Deadpool is the type of movie that is trades on violence and sex and comedy and all that, but holy shit, this movie has so much heart and character. It sounds crazy, but I have to say, it's one of the most, this is going to sound nuts and people are going to think I'm just making this shit up for, to be provocative, but it's actually one of the most touching superhero movies I've ever seen. There is so much pathos and ethos in this movie. If you know screenwriting, and you don't have to know screenwriting to get into movies, to enjoy movies, etc., but they put it all there. It is so, just such a complete story and character. That is what surprised me. I knew this movie would kill it because the first one is one of the best superhero movie adaptations of all time. I don't think that's even in dispute. But what I was surprised at was how much they took those specific essences of the character and of personality, of trait, and made a real story out of it. They could have easily just made a huge blockbuster shit fest of explosions and limbs being cut off and whatever, and jokes and all that shit, and we would all have loved it. It would have been fantastic. Maybe a little bit more shallow than the original. Who cares? Would have killed at the box office. But instead, they really just turned. I actually have to stop for a second. But instead, they took. It's an amazing screenplay. That's what's most amazing about this film is the screenplay. One of the beautiful and brilliant things about Deadpool #1 was the amazing visual realization of that film, the visual adaptation of that superhero. Tim Miller, I think, it's too bad because the guy's barely done anything and then he got kicked off this franchise. But Tim Miller, I think, is one of the greatest directors in superhero cinema of all time. That guy, coming from video game CGI and coming from special effects direction, he knows exactly how to film every single element of a special effect. And it is, especially if you look at that first film at a $58 million budget, it was nut shit how much coolness, how much action, how much awesomeness they were able to get out of that budget. It's just fucking insane. It's insane. And now they actually had a decent budget, and then they went and got, one of the things I was most worried about was the fact that Tim Miller wasn't going to be involved in it. And, of course, they got one of the John Wick guys. So you're like, okay, well, at least we know it's in safe hands. It was. Great movie. No complaints about John Wick guy, except for the fact that he's no Tim Miller. And I'll go ahead and stake my name on this. I know this will be controversial. People will, say you're just bitching for the purpose of bitching, but no, he's no Tim Miller. Great movie, awesome action and shit, but tons of shaky cam, tons of shit where we're cutting back and forth to shots where it's difficult to tell where the hell we are. what the spatial arrangements or differences are. I mean, those parts of it, I thought were kind of nuts. And, it reminded me of watching Infinity War a little bit in that, there were parts where I was just like, hey, dude, I'm just trying to see what's going on here. I'm trying to see what the action is that you're trying to show me. I want to see what you put on the screen. You're not letting me. But really, that's a kind of a minor thing about it. I think that the biggest thing that is most important about this movie, the most distinctive value of this movie, is that people are going to see this. I don't know, maybe for me, I had a certain reaction. I had some shit go on in my life recently. I've lost a loved one. It was very difficult. And so maybe I was had a higher propensity to that. That's certainly possible. I mean, I'm not going to discount that, but I'll tell you one thing. This movie made me cry. I mean, the emotion that is in this movie is so beautiful. And even though it's completely surrounded in dick jokes and arms getting cut off jokes or whatever the case is, that is so real. And I just thought that, I've seen every superhero movie that's come out at least since 2000. I like to think and likely have seen every superhero movie that's come out since 1990. There's always some weird low-budget direct-to-video stuff that sometimes slips past you or whatever. But when you think, I'm looking at Deadpool 2, and I see more emotional value than I did in easily the entire last two Batman movies of the 90s. I mean, you're talking, there's some real emotion there. And the ironic thing is to me, I want to see the action. And that's what pisses me off is when we get some shaky cam scenes or whatever. But that's what really surprised me is how much of an impact the emotion had there. There was a really good story there. There's also some fuck-ups, frankly. Cable sucked. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that. Cable was cool. Cable was badass. What I would say is that they mishandled Cable to an extent. If you are a fan of the 1990s X-Men series, that is the real Cable to me. That's my real Cable. And I was really bummed out at how many beats, how many notes of Cable's character that they kind of just didn't hit, or they hit wrong. It's like he looks like a cyborg. Okay, Cable's not a cyborg. Cable is a guy who has a techno-virus that's taking over half his body. So yes, he technically is a cyborg, and that half of him is this, cybernetic entity. However, it's a disease that's encroaching. It's not like he had an implant, and yet his arm looks more implantish than, well, whatever. I mean, maybe, you know what? You're going to see it. You make a judgment if you think that I'm being overly critical. He starts out when we show him in the future and he transfers back or travels back in time. No idea what's going on. Absolutely no idea why he goes. I mean, well, there's some type of death or something like that. But it was just, when I compare that to Time Fugitives Part 1 and 2 from X-Men the Animated Series that aired in 1993, second season of X-Men the Animated Series, and how beautifully, perfectly that show laid out Cable's timeline and him coming back to our timeline and the reasons, the purposes, the enemies, the fact that the X-Men are standing in front of him. I mean, they hit a few of those notes in Deadpool, but I mean, it was just, it's all there from 1993. I don't understand it. Even his the eye glow seemed to be because it was a cybernetic implant, whereas in the cartoon, and I believe in the comics, It's his mutant power. That his eye flares when he's using his mutant power. That never happens in the movie. It flares, but just at random dramatic moments. When he looks at someone, it's not like he's ever using his power. His telekinesis. There's a moment in X-Men the Animated Series where his gun is separated from him, and so he like looks over to it, and in a Jean Grey energy reach, that suddenly the gun comes up to his hand. It's badass. Well, in this movie, the gun's just like at least twice, I believe, his gun separated from him just flies up from behind him, and then magnets onto his back, as if he didn't even know it was happening. For all we know, it could be the technology that he's wearing or something. It just made no sense. It's one of the things they said about the reshoots was that that the audiences wanted more Cable, which I can understand. I mean, Josh Brolin's awesome, and Cable's an awesome character, so of course. But they gave you more Cable. I'm assuming that the runtime of Cable was more than what was in the original cut, but they didn't really expend any more time from the screenplay to like explain what was going on with him, what his powers are. Even when he's using his powers, the guns fly to his back and just like go into the holsters on his back or something. It makes no sense. It's kind of a cool shot, but it's so shallow. There's nothing to it, and so I gotta admit that disappointed me. Cable is a badass, but I was super disappointed that the cartoon did him so much better. Those are a couple of the big notes for me. Was just how beautiful the story and emotion a lot of the characterizations were in this, and then in Cable I was a little disappointed. John Wick director, a little disappointed in his shaky camishness. Maybe this is a big jump up for him in budget, and anytime a small budget guy goes up into a big budget, it's a little bit difficult because they just have to manage so much more. So I don't know if that's part of it, but still great action. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to bitch about the entire action. I'm just saying that there are lots of stuff where I'm just like, hey, let me see what's going on. Let me see the superpowers. So that, and then the final note I would say, and I would say maybe this is a spoiler. I don't think it's a spoiler, but because I've heard about this online, there are these rumors that ... I'll give you a chance to click out of the video if you're really, really anti-spoilers, but it's very vague, so wouldn't worry about it. But Juggernaut apparently is supposed to be in this movie, right? And you know what? He does show up briefly, and that's pretty cool. And I was pretty amazed that they did that, they didn't really, it was very brief. They didn't show him in full costume. I'm not going to really spoil anything about it, tell you what happened, but that's kind of badass. Just the fact that whenever you, even literally agree to take on that type of character, Juggernaut, who is so clearly the type of character that's going to be needed to be produced in CGI, that is such a physically dominant or huge character compared to the regular actors that you're using. It's a bold move, and I was actually a little bit shocked that they did it. But it made sense because one of the characters that was confirmed early on was Black Tom Cassidy. And even though they didn't really have much of any connection between them, that was actually kind of cool. So I was really impressed that they did that, and I thought, they definitely, the visuals were pretty killer on it. And the movie was, the movie was amazing. The movie was absolutely amazing. I think that it's just crazy to me that one of the best superhero movie franchises is Deadpool. because it seems like that would be the most shallow type of movie franchise of superhero franchise. It's based so much on comedy and violence. You could just say, oh, it's just going to be some dumb, stupid, cheesy action movie, and instead there is so much character there. There's a joke. This is a small I mean, I don't even consider it a spoiler again, but there's a joke in there that Deadpool tells to the audience, narrating early on, where he calls it a family movie. And god damn, he is right. It is a family movie. It's a family about love and friendship, and oh, it's just nuts. I mean, I teared up several times in the movie. I couldn't believe it. And again, maybe I'm just an emotional an emotional wreck, but I loved it. Go see it. I know you'll love it. I don't know who would not love this. People who don't like the F word or whatever, people who don't like violence. Anyone else, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't like this. Go see it. Go see it. Effing awesome. Love it. It gets the Hero Journalism seal approval. Anyways, go see it. You know you're going to love it. It's an amazing film. Almost no one didn't like the first one. If you like the first one, you're going to love this film. Go out and see it. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you saw or felt any of those emotional touch strings pulled that I did. I'm sure people are going to savage me on Facebook and on YouTube comments about that, but whatever. I don't care. I loved it. I mean, it made me cry, and I'm not too ashamed to admit that. So, in fact, I was like trying to hide it. I was in a big group of about 10 people that went to see it, and I was like asking people for napkins to blow my nose, and they're all like, "What do you need napkins for? We haven't eaten anything in an hour and a half." And so, I mean, go see it. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. Awesome movie, no doubt about it. The in jokes were amazing. The meta jokes, the DC jokes. Oh my god, it's just it could not be better. I can't wait till he is integrated into the Marvel universe. Anyways, I'm 4K signing off until next time. Look forward to seeing you guys again here on Hero Journalism.